The moment arrives for everyone. The crossroads where everything inside you screams to step back, stay safe, remain comfortable. Yet something deeper whispers that the other path, the one shrouded in uncertainty, holds everything you've been searching for. What happens in that moment defines not just your next hour or day, but potentially the entire trajectory of your life. Fear speaks first, doesn't it? It always has the floor before courage can clear its throat. And fear is persuasive. Oh, so persuasive. It wraps itself in the language of wisdom, of prudence, of reasonable caution. Maybe tomorrow. It suggests when you're more prepared, when conditions improve. But here's what I've discovered after observing thousands of lives. Tomorrow is fear's favorite word. Tomorrow is where dreams go to age quietly until they're eventually forgotten. The question isn't whether fear will visit you. It will. The question is, who makes the final decision when it does? You see, most people believe the opposite of fear is courage. It's not. The opposite of fear is action. Fear and action cannot coexist in the same moment. The instant you take genuine action, fear must retreat. I want you to consider something that might change everything for you. What if the presence of fear is actually life's way of pointing you toward growth? What if fear isn't a warning system designed to protect you from danger, but rather a compass consistently pointing toward your greatest potential? The things that frighten us most are typically the very things that would cause us to grow the most. Think about the conversations you've been avoiding, the risks you've been postponing, the changes you've been delaying, all because something inside feels uncertain, uncomfortable, perhaps even terrifying. Well, what happens to a garden that's never disturbed? It becomes overrun. What happens to muscles never challenged? They weaken. What happens to a life never pushed beyond its familiar boundaries? It shrinks. There's a price for safety when safety becomes our highest value. And that price is possibility. When we organize our lives around avoiding discomfort, we inadvertently organize our lives around avoiding growth. The truth is, most regrets at the end of life aren't about the mistakes we made. They're about the chances we never took, the paths we never explored, the versions of ourselves we never became because we were too afraid to try. I've asked countless people in their later years what they wish they could do differently. I've yet to hear anyone say, "I wish I'd played it safer." Instead, they speak of risks untaken, love unexpressed, dreams unpursued. The most dangerous risk of all is spending your life not doing what truly matters to you, thinking you'll have time later. Later. That mystical land where 99 of all human potential is stored. Now, does this mean we should be reckless? That we should ignore wisdom and prudence? Absolutely not. Fear serves a purpose. It asks us to prepare. But preparation without action becomes procrastination disguised as responsibility. The key distinction is this. Are you preparing to move forward, or are you preparing as a way to avoid moving at all? The quality of your life will be determined by your willingness to face uncertainty with purpose, rather than retreat from it in search of comfort. Look around you. Every meaningful human achievement, every breakthrough, every transformation, they all began with someone feeling afraid yet choosing to act anyway. Success isn't the absence of fear. It's the triumph over it. Success is feeling the fear, respecting it, but not letting it vote on your actions. What pool are you standing at the edge of right now? What life-giving experience awaits you on the other side of your hesitation? Perhaps it's starting that business you've been contemplating for years, or having that difficult conversation that might lead to healing. Maybe it's finally putting your creative work into the world without knowing how it will be received. Whatever it is, I want to offer you this truth. The thing you fear doing is likely the very thing that would set you free. Most people overestimate the risks of action and underestimate the risks of inaction. The risks of action are usually temporary embarrassment, rejection, failure. The risks of inaction compound over time. Regret, stagnation, watching others live the life you wanted. What I've learned by studying both achievement and disappointment. The path to fulfillment isn't found in the elimination of challenges. It's found in the strengthening of your response to those challenges. The storm is not the problem. Your inability to navigate the storm is the problem, and that ability only develops when you sail directly into uncertain waters. Let me be clear about something. Fear will never completely disappear from your life, and thank goodness for that. A life without fear would be a life without growth. The goal isn't to eliminate fear, but to develop such a powerful relationship with action that fear becomes irrelevant to your decisions. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the recognition that some things are more important than fear. I've noticed an interesting pattern among people who achieve remarkable things. They don't necessarily feel less fear than others. They've simply developed the habit of acting despite the fear. For them, fear has become a signal to prepare, not think of fear as a gate. Most people see it and turn around assuming it's locked. The successful minority walk up to that same gate and simply push it open. Same gate, different response. The quality of your life ultimately depends on your relationship with uncertainty. Will you let it paralyze you, or will you let it energize you? Every significant breakthrough begins with a breakdown of old patterns. Every transformation requires leaving something behind. Every new chapter demands turning the page on the current one. These transitions are rarely comfortable. They're meant to challenge you. They're designed to stretch you beyond your current dimensions. The most successful people in any field have typically failed more times than the average person has even tried. They've just refused to let those failures define them or determine their next move. Fourth, create urgency through awareness of life's brevity. We behave as if we have unlimited time, unlimited chances, unlimited tomorrows. We don't. The recognition of life's finite nature can be the very thing that pushes you past hesitation into meaningful action. Ask yourself, if I knew I only had 5 years left, would I still let this fear stop me? The answer to that question contains profound wisdom about what truly matters to you. Finally, practice being uncomfortable. Deliberately seek small challenges daily, cold showers, difficult conversations, public speaking, reaching out to strangers. These minor discomforts build your tolerance for uncertainty and teach you that you can function, even thrive outside your comfort zone. Now, I want to address something important. There are different types of fear, and they require different responses. Some fears are protective. They warn us of genuine danger. These deserve respect and consideration. But many of our most limiting fears are outdated. They're protecting us from social conditions that no longer exist. The fear of public rejection made perfect sense in tribal societies where exclusion meant death. But today, that same fear might be keeping you from sharing your ideas, your art, your unique perspective with a world that might benefit enormously. The fears that most commonly hold us back aren't about physical safety. They're about psychological comfort. The fear of looking foolish, the fear of criticism, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of responsibility if we actually succeed. These fears deserve examination, not automatic obedience. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could realistically happen if I take this action? And could I handle that outcome? Most often, you'll discover that even the worst case scenario is manageable, and the potential upside far outweighs the risk. Consider this truth. The very thing you're avoiding contains the growth you need most. The conversation you're dreading might be the one that heals the relationship. The risk you're postponing might contain the opportunity you've been waiting for. The vulnerability you're protecting yourself from might be the very thing that connects you deeply with others. I've seen people transform their lives, not by doing extraordinary things, but by doing ordinary things with extraordinary consistency, especially when those ordinary things felt uncomfortable at first. The gym goer who shows up 3 times a week for a year, despite initial discomfort and self-consciousness, transforms not just their body, but their relationship with challenge itself. The entrepreneur who makes 5 sales calls daily, despite rejection and awkwardness, eventually builds not just a business, but an immunity to the sting of hearing no. The artist who creates daily despite inner criticism and uncertainty develops not just skill, but an identity that transcends the opinions of others. These people aren't special. They've simply developed a different relationship with discomfort. They've learned that temporary discomfort is the price of admission for lasting growth. And here's something remarkable. As you develop this new relationship with action in the face of fear, the nature of fear itself begins to change. What once felt threatening starts to feel like excitement. What once triggered retreat now signals opportunity. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens decision by decision, action by action, day by day, until one morning you realize you're no longer the person who was paralyzed by uncertainty. You've become someone who uses uncertainty as fuel. The greatest irony is that by facing your fears, you actually experience less fear overall. Those who avoid challenges become increasingly sensitive to discomfort, while those who embrace challenges develop resilience that makes future challenges less daunting. I want you to imagine yourself 1 year from today. That future version of you is looking back at the decisions you're making right now. What would they want you to choose? What actions would they wish you had taken? What fears would they wish you had faced? That future self knows something your present self might be struggling to believe. You are far more capable than your fears would have you believe. The tragedy of life isn't that we aim too high and miss. It's that we aim too low and hit. We let our fears define the boundaries of our lives, never discovering what might have been possible beyond those self-imposed limitations. Think about the dreams you've postponed, the risks you've avoided, the growth you've delayed, all because something inside felt uncertain or uncomfortable. Now imagine the freedom that comes from rebuilding your relationship with fear. When fear becomes not a wall that stops you, but a doorway that invites you forward. This isn't about becoming fearless. It's about becoming fear consistent. Consistent in your willingness to act despite fear, consistent in your commitment to growth over comfort, consistent in your recognition that the path to an extraordinary life runs directly through your deepest uncertainties. The decision is yours, as it has always been. Will you let fear have the final word on what's possible for you? Or will you use fear as a compass, consistently pointing you toward your most meaningful growth? Your future is created by what you do today, not tomorrow. The actions you take in moments of fear and uncertainty, especially in those moments, are what ultimately shape your destiny. So I leave you with this question. What meaningful action are you avoiding right now that, if taken, could change everything for you? Whatever it is, that's where your growth awaits. That's where your future is being decided. Fear will always offer its opinion, but you decide who gets the final vote. The most fulfilled people I've ever met aren't those who avoided problems. They're those who address problems promptly and directly. They've developed the habit of moving toward challenges rather than away from them. This doesn't mean they don't feel apprehension. It means they've learned that apprehension is a poor guide for decision making. Let me tell you about two types of people I've observed. The first type organizes their life around seeking comfort and avoiding pain. Every decision is filtered through the question, will this make me feel comfortable and secure? The second type organizes their life around seeking growth and contribution. Their filtering question is different. Will this help me become the person I want to be? Same circumstances, different filters, dramatically different lives. The first approach might seem to offer safety, but it actually creates increasing vulnerability. As the world changes, as it always does, these comfort seekers find themselves increasingly anxious, increasingly unable to adapt. Their comfort zone becomes a cage. The growth seekers, meanwhile, develop an increasing capacity to handle uncertainty. The challenges that paralyze others become the very experiences they use to expand their capability. Which approach do you tend toward? Be honest with yourself. Do you make most decisions based on what feels safe or what helps you grow? There's no judgment in this question, just an invitation to awareness, because awareness is where transformation begins. I want to address something many of us struggle with, the gap between knowing and doing. Most of us know what actions would improve our lives. The challenge isn't knowledge, it's application. We know we should have that difficult conversation. Start that project, make that change, yet something stops us. That something is almost always fear disguised as something else. Fear disguised as being practical. Fear disguised as waiting for the right time. Fear disguised as needing more information. The cure for this gap isn't more knowledge. It's the recognition that action precedes clarity, not the other way around. We think, once I feel completely clear and confident, then I'll act. The truth is, once I begin taking action, clarity and confidence will develop. This is why the most successful people are rarely the most naturally confident. They're simply the ones who've learned to act while uncertain, trusting that certainty develops through experience, not before it. Think about learning to drive. Did you feel completely confident before your first time behind the wheel? Of course not. You became confident by driving, not by thinking about driving. The same principle applies to every area of growth. Confidence isn't a prerequisite for action. It's a result of action. So what action have you been postponing until you feel ready? What if readiness is a myth? What if the only way to become ready is to begin while not feeling ready at all? Now let's address another barrier to meaningful action. Perfectionism. This might be the most insidious form of fear because it disguises itself as excellence. I just want it to be perfect, we tell ourselves. But what we're really saying is, I'm terrified of criticism, judgment, or falling short. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about fear management. It's about trying to make something criticism-proof, which is both impossible and counterproductive. Nothing remarkable was ever created by someone who waited until conditions were perfect or until they felt completely ready. The most meaningful work, whether in art, business, relationships, or personal growth, emerges through iteration, through the willingness to create something imperfect and then improve it. Perfection isn't the goal. Progress is the goal, and progress only happens through imperfect. What in your life are you refusing to begin because conditions aren't perfect? What opportunity are you missing while waiting for certainty that will never arrive? There's a wonderful phrase, start before you're ready. This isn't reckless advice. It's recognition of how growth actually happens. We become ready by starting, not before starting. This brings me to another crucial understanding, the relationship between fear and time. Fear has a fascinating relationship with time frames. The further in the future an action seems, the less fear we feel about it. Someday I'll start that business feels comfortable precisely because someday isn't today. But as that someday approaches, as it transforms from abstract future into concrete present, fear intensifies. This is why so many people perpetually postpone their most meaningful goals. Keeping them safely in the someday category feels better than facing the fear of beginning today. The solution isn't better planning or stronger commitment to a future start date. It's recognizing that meaningful change only happens in the present moment, never in some imagined future. What would happen if you collapse your time frame? If instead of thinking about what you might do someday, you asked yourself, what small action could I take in the next hour that would move me toward this goal? This shift from someday to today, from the abstract future to the concrete present, is where real transformation happens. I've noticed that the most effective people rarely think in terms of massive future changes. They think in terms of the next small action they can take right now. They understand that life changes not in dramatic moments of courage, but in humble moments of consistent action. Let me ask you, what meaningful change have you been projecting into the future that you could begin, even in the smallest way? Perhaps it's that conversation you've been avoiding, or that project you've been postponing, or that habit you've been delaying. What if today were the day? Not for the complete transformation, but for the first small step. There's something incredibly powerful about deciding that waiting is no longer an option. That someday has arrived. That fear will no longer have veto power over your choices. This fear of our own potential explains why so many people self-sabotage just as they approach significant breakthroughs. The old identity fights to survive, creating obstacles, generating distractions, anything to avoid the vulnerability of transformation. Recognize this pattern if it appears in your life. See it for what it is, not a sign to retreat, but a sign that you're approaching a threshold of meaningful growth. The discomfort you feel at these thresholds isn't a warning. It's an invitation. an invitation to become more than you've been, to express more than you've expressed, to contribute more than you've contributed. Answering this invitation requires courage. Not the dramatic, movie hero kind of courage, but the quiet, daily kind. The willingness to feel uncomfortable and proceed anyway, the commitment to growth even when growth hurts. This is the courage that transforms ordinary lives into extraordinary ones, not through dramatic, visible achievements, but through the consistent willingness to face what feels frightening in pursuit of what matters most. So I ask you again, what fear are you allowing to make your decisions for you? What growth awaits you on the other side of that fear? Whatever it is, know this. You are capable of far more than your fears would have you believe. The limitations you perceive are largely self-imposed. The boundaries you accept are mostly imaginary. What would become possible if you decided, truly decided, that fear would no longer have the final vote on your choices? I believe this with my whole heart. The moment you stop letting fear make your decisions is the moment your real life begins. Not a life free from fear. That's neither possible nor desirable. But a life where fear has been demoted from decision maker to merely one voice among many. A life where courage, purpose, and possibility have equal or greater votes in determining your actions. This isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully who you already are beneath the layers of protection and hesitation that fear has built around your true self. The person you glimpse in your moments of greatest clarity, the one who knows what matters, who feels drawn toward meaningful challenge, who longs to make a difference. That's who you actually are. That's your authentic self waiting behind the barriers of fear. Your task, perhaps the most important task of your life, is to build a relationship with fear that allows your authentic self to emerge and express itself fully in the world. This doesn't happen through a single dramatic decision. It happens choice by choice, day by day, moment by moment. Each time you feel afraid, yet choose to act anyway. Each of these moments might seem small and insignificant when viewed alone, but together, they create the trajectory of your life. Together, they determine whether you look back with satisfaction or regret. Together, they define the impact you'll have and the example you'll set for others. So I challenge you, make your next decision based not on what feels safe, but on what feels meaningful. Not on what protects you from discomfort, but on what moves you toward growth. Feel the fear? Honor it. Acknowledge it. Then choose based on who you want to become, not what you want to avoid. This is how transformation happens. This is how ordinary people create extraordinary lives. This is how you claim the freedom and fulfillment that have been waiting for you all along. Fear or growth? Comfort or possibility? The familiar or the meaningful? The choice, as always, is yours. Choose well. Let me share with you something I've observed after studying success and fulfillment across thousands of lives. The cost of fear is far greater than the cost of failure. When we fail at something, we lose time, perhaps money, maybe even face some embarrassment or disappointment. These losses are real, but they're almost always temporary. They're also rich with lessons that serve us in future attempts. But when we let fear prevent us from trying at all, what we lose is incalculable. We lose possibilities that can never be recovered. We lose versions of ourselves that will never have the chance to exist. We lose impacts on others that will never be made. And unlike the losses of failure, these losses compound over time. Each time fear wins a decision, it grows stronger. Each time we retreat from uncertainty, our comfort zone shrinks a little more. Each time we choose safety over growth, we reinforce the belief that safety is what we need most. Before long, these individual choices create a life defined more by what's been avoided than by what's been embraced. A life where the driving question becomes, how can I stay comfortable, rather than how can I grow, or how can I contribute? Is that the life you want? Is that the story you want to tell with your time here? I suspect not. I suspect there's something in you that longs for more. More challenge, more growth, more impact, more aliveness. That longing is your authentic self trying to break through the barriers of fear. It's the voice of your potential calling you toward a fuller expression of who you are and what you're capable of. Listening to that voice, honoring that longing, requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to fear and uncertainty. Instead of asking, how can I eliminate fear from this situation? Start asking, how can I proceed meaningfully despite the presence of fear? Instead of waiting until you feel confident before taking action, recognize that confidence is the result of action, not its prerequisite. Instead of believing that, comfort and security should be your primary aims. Consider that growth and contribution might be far more fulfilling pursuits, even when they involve discomfort and uncertainty. These shifts don't happen overnight. They develop through practice, through making different choices in moments of fear and uncertainty, then observing the results with honesty and openness. What you'll discover through this practice is both surprising and liberating. The very things you've been most afraid of often contain the growth you need most. The conversation you've been avoiding might be the one that heals the relationship. The project you've been postponing might contain the creative breakthrough you've been seeking. The change you've been resisting might lead to far greater fulfillment than the status quo you've been desperately trying to preserve. You'll also discover that your capacity for handling uncertainty is far greater than you've believed, that you're capable of functioning, even thriving, in conditions that once seemed overwhelming. This discovery changes everything, because once you know that you can handle uncertainty, that you can take meaningful action even while feeling afraid, you become unstoppable. The barriers that once seemed insurmountable become simply the next challenge to address. This isn't about becoming fearless. It's about becoming fear-resistant, able to feel. Think about what that would mean for your life. How would your daily choices change if fear no longer had veto power over your decisions? What would you attempt? What would you say? How would you show up differently in your relationships, your work, your creative pursuits? I believe the answers to these questions reveal your true potential. Not what you're capable of in some ideal fear-free world, but what you're capable of right now in this world despite the fears you feel. But potential alone changes nothing. It's the translation of potential into action that creates transformation. So I ask you, what's one meaningful action you've been avoiding out of fear that you could take this week? Not next month, not when you're ready, but this week? Perhaps it's having that difficult conversation, starting that project, making that change, taking that risk. Whatever it is, consider what would become possible if you decided to face it directly rather than continuing to avoid it. And then, this is crucial, take that action, feeling the fear, but not letting it decide for you. What you'll discover through this experience goes beyond the immediate results of the action itself. You'll discover something about your own capacity for courage. You'll expand your understanding of what's possible for you. And most importantly, you'll begin to reshape your relationship with fear from one of obedience to one of partnership, where fear can offer its perspective, but no longer gets to determine your choices. This single shift, from letting fear decide to letting fear inform, can transform every aspect of your life. It can transform how you show up in relationships, allowing you to be more authentic, more vulnerable, more fully present. But this transformation isn't automatic. It depends entirely on your willingness to practice a new response to fear when it arises, acknowledgement without obedience, respect without retreat, listening without letting it have the final word. This practice isn't about eliminating fear. It's about changing your relationship with it. And like any relationship change, it happens through consistent small choices that, over time, establish a new pattern. Each time you feel afraid yet choose to act anyway, you're establishing this new pattern. Each time you move toward meaningful discomfort rather than away from it, you're reinforcing this new relationship with fear. Eventually, what once felt like acts of exceptional courage become simply how you live. What once required immense effort becomes your natural way of being in the world. This is the journey from fear control to fear resistant. It's available to anyone willing to practice this new response to fear consistently, patiently, with compassion for the inevitable setbacks along the way. Because yes, there will be setbacks. There will be times when fear wins a decision, when you retreat, when you could have advanced, when comfort seems more compelling than growth. These moments don't define you. They don't erase your progress. They're simply opportunities to practice self-compassion and then return to the path of growth. This battle, I want to leave you with this final thought. The decision to stop letting fear control your choices isn't just about your personal fulfillment. Though that's certainly part of it, it's also about your impact on others. Because here's the truth. Courage is contagious. When you face your fears and take meaningful action anyway, you become living proof of what's possible. You inspire others through your example far more powerfully than through any words you could speak. Think about the people in your life. Family members, colleagues, friends, perhaps children who look to you as an example. How might your willingness to face fear with purpose influence their relationship with their own fears? What might become possible for them if they saw in you a model of moving toward meaningful challenges rather than away from them, of prioritizing growth over comfort, of choosing purpose over safety? Your journey beyond fear-based decisions isn't just for you. It's for everyone your life touches, directly and indirectly. So I ask you one final time, what fear are you allowing to make your decisions for you? And what will you do differently, starting today, to change that relationship? The answer to that question could change everything, not just for you, but for countless others whose lives intersect with yours. Choose wisely. Choose courageously. Choose in alignment with who you truly are beneath the layers of protection that fear has built. The world needs that authentic self to emerge and express itself fully. The world needs your courage, your creativity, your contribution, all of which remain locked behind the barriers of fear until you decide to face them directly. That decision begins now with your next choice. Make it count